It was now our third day of diving off the Quino, and we were now located off the eastern shore of Socorro Island at a dive site called Cabo Pierce. At this point, we were all well settled into our routine, and getting ready and getting off the boat proved to be fairly painless. After we had been burned trying to move dive locations at San Benedicto, the plan was to do all the dives today off Cabo Pierce. While we still weren't getting tired of mantas and sharks by a long shot, the big draw today, and the reason why it became one of the most memorable days of the entire trip, was because we started seeing dolphins. And we saw a lot of them. We ended up encountering dolphins on all 4 of the dives today. Even when we weren't seeing them, we could hear them circling around somewhere in the area. The guides had warned us that the dolphins are somewhat notorious for kind of coming up, playing, and tempting you to go deeper until all of a sudden you look and you're deep enough where you're almost in trouble. For whatever reason, we didn't have that issue. They generally just came, took a look at us, circled around once or twice, and then left. At one point, we caught sight of something and went further out to take a look. Now, keep in mind that the bottom that you can see here is well beyond the maximum depth that we could go, thanks to the nitrox mix we were breathing. It turned out the thing that we'd caught sight of was a small group of dolphins that were resting on the bottom way below. They were just hanging out down there, minding their own business, at least until this one came by and spooked them all. And of course, we had more mantas. Unlike the dolphins, the mantas were more than happy to make multiple passes and hang around us for an extended period of time. It actually got to the point where I wasn't always filming when we had a manta around us. At one point, we even had a real treat where we had 2 mantas that were circling around and playing with us. And of course, we had our usual assortment of white-tip sharks and other fish. All dives were done off of a Zodiac, which is an inflatable boat that basically took us out to the site and then picked us up afterwards. At one point, we even got a bit of a scenic tour on the way back to the boat, and they took us through this little arch. Getting back onto the liveaboard was always a little bit of an adventure. Basically, they would line up like this, gun it, and then try and drive up onto the ramp, at which point they'd tie the Zodiac onto the back, and we could all jump off. This time, the driver had misjudged the swell just a little bit.
And here's the afternoon slip. We've just come off the high of the 3rd dive, which was amazing. Dolphin pile, but we still get to get one more dive today.
In between the dives, most of the other guests were sunning themselves up on the top deck. Considering I just come from a cross-country hike and how much sun we absorbed on the Mississippi, that wasn't really something Jen and I were interested in doing. Also at this point, I started handing the camera to Jen off and on. I do really like taking video underwater. I like being able to show my family, friends, things like that. But it is kind of amazing how much better of a diver you feel like when you're not having to fiddle with the camera. How can you tell Jen is running the camera here? Basically, she kept chasing after pufferfish. The current had also started to pick up on this dive, meaning downside we were burning through more air, but we did get to see some interesting behavior from the fish. I like to say that scuba diving is the closest you're ever going to get to flying, and I feel like this shot really kind of shows off what it feels like when you're there floating above a big drop. Thanks to the current, we also ended up coming up a little earlier on this dive, so I got to practice with my SMB. After we're back from the last dive, everybody basically rushes to the showers because, you know, you've been cold, you've been in the water all day, all you want to do is get warm, get clean, get into some dry clothes. After that, it's time to eat, and then pretty quick, most of us were going to bed. Unfortunately, I wasn't feeling great, so I spent a little time watching the sharks, and then I headed for our cabin.